My name is Fred Platt. I've been appointed as moderator pro tem tonight in place of moderator Rod Stark, who's out of town. I've served as assistant moderator through several town and school elections, and I served as moderator pro tem 2 years ago in 2009 and 4 years ago in 2007. And so every other year you're kind of stuck with me. That's the way it works, apparently. I just wanted to start out with if I may, a moment of silence. We just lost Helen Skoglund, who died just the other day. And Helen was a supervisor of the checklist for several years for the town. She was school district treasurer. She was on the school board for several years, and she was in the town finance office for several years. So quite a long civic career at town and school, and she's also very active at St. Lawrence Church for several years. So if we may have that moment. Thank you. I'll start out by Officer Jeff Bernard leads the color guard, the Police Explorer color guards, and they are going to open the meeting tonight with a presentation of the flags and a pledge. Thank you. I'd try that, but I don't know which is my left. I'd like to start out introducing the head table. On my right, to the far right, is our scribe recording secretary, Marie Boyle. And I've appointed assistant moderator tonight, Lionel Cohen. Thank you, Lionel. To my left is Chairman Scott Gross, immediate left. Vice Chair Phil Devanza next. Nick Campusano, Selectman Nick Campusano, Selectman David Pierce, Selectman Steve Fournier, and Town Administrator Sue Russo at the very end. I'd also like to recognize the Budget Committee. Dan Cloutier, you're here somewhere. Where are you? He was here earlier.
He just walked outside for a moment.
Pardon?
He just walked outside.
I wanted to have him recognize the rest of the Budget Committee. See if I can get him back in here. Meanwhile, while we're waiting for Dan to come in, and we should have dignitaries in the audience, at least some of them. Is Selectman John Burke here? Selectman State Rep John Burke? John Burke? Okay. Is State Rep Ross Day here? Straight ahead somewhere. Okay. And State Rep Larry Emmett, I did not see. State Rep John Heichel, are you here? Okay. State Rep Gary Hopper. State Rep Neil Kirk. State Rep Calvin Pratt, anywhere? State Rep Mark Ward. Okay, and State Senator Luz Alessandro often comes, but I didn't see him tonight. Oh, he is here. Hello, Senator Alessandro. Thank you for joining us. Okay, did we get Dan Cloutier back? Dan, I tried to recognize the Budget Committee. Would you introduce the members of the Budget Committee?
Would it be easy enough to say if you're here, would you stand up, please? Okay, raise your hand.
Thank you for all your hard work. Really appreciate it. One more recognition that I think is in order. We're due for more snow tonight. 1 to 3 tonight, 3 to 5 tomorrow. And have you had enough snow this year? We've had incredible amounts of it. And I think that the Department of the DPW, the fire, and the police have done admirably through all these snowstorms and keeping the roads clear and conditions safe. And so I think they deserve a round of applause. I'd like to introduce at this time Rick Wilhelmi, who's the director of the Parks and Rec Department for Robinson Colorado Volunteer Award.
Put my eyes on. This is getting bad. Thank you very much, Fred, and thank you all for coming. If you don't know, my name is Rick Wilhelmi. I've been the Director of Parks and Recreation since March of 2010. I'm very excited to be part of a team of people committed to health and wellness of all ages in our community through recreational activities. We have an outstanding community, and I'm very proud to be part of that community with recreational activities. I'd also like to take the time to acknowledge our commissioners, Chairman Mark Campbell is right there. I don't believe anybody else is here, so I'll just say their names. Vice Chairman Bill Sullivan, Kevin Baines, Bob Draper, Howard Soboloff, Susan Tucker, Jane Stekowitz, and Jan McDougall. These are great people to work with, and they have a lot of phenomenal ideas. A lot of out-of-the-box thinking has been going on, and we're quite excited. The reason you all came is for this award, right? Tough crowd, okay. All right. I am here to present the 22nd Annual Clint Robertson Lionel Colorado Community Volunteer Award. This award was established by the Goffstown Parks and Recreation Commission and the Board of Selectmen to be given annually to the person or group that best exemplifies the spirit of volunteerism for the community of Goffstown, as shown by Clint Robinson and Lionel Colorado. At this time, I'd like to have Lionel Colorado come right up, and Barbara Robinson come on up, please. For any community to be a strong community, it relies on our resources of the people within the community. And Goffstown has a strong community of dedicated individuals working with our young and old alike. We in the recreation world understand the necessity of volunteers to build a bigger and stronger program. This year's Robinson Colorado Award is being bestowed on a gentleman who has provided instructional and athletic training to our young children in the sport of track and field. Track and field I'm talking about is the Hershey Track and Field. These are games that introduce kids to physical fitness and healthy lifestyles through basic track and field events. At these games, every child is a winner. While all participants will leave a Hershey meet with a newfound sense of accomplishment, a select few will be able to advance to districts or state meets and even the annual North American final meet in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Jim Clark has been involved with the Goffstown Hershey Track and Field program for the past 10 years. He has run almost every Goffstown Gallop since it was established and won the race in 2002. He lives locally on a 240-acre farm and has made cross-country running trails on this land. His dedication to running shows. He was a call firefighter for the town for over 10 years. He's coached cross-country as a volunteer for Mount Zion High School in Manchester. He believes strongly that kids should have more opportunities to explore physical fitness in a recreational setting prior to competing competitively. We would like to thank Jim for his 10 years of dedication to this national program called Hershey Track and Field. Jim, please come on.
I'd like to thank the parents that help out. It's always a group effort, and I see Sue Plants over there, and I'm sure there's some other parents that have helped me. Usually we get together, and some people do the paperwork, and I like to go run with the kids. We just run around the track, and we have a lot of fun. And I'd like to put in a plug for the track, keep it up. I think it's a good asset for any town. It's something that people can go. I think right now they're doing cross-country skiing around it in the winter, and in the summer I see a lot of people out there with baby strollers, and it's a nice asset for the town, and it's a good thing to keep up. And I'd like to thank everybody that helped me with Hershey Track for the last 10 years. It's a lot of fun. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Because she's not sitting up here, I didn't introduce her, and it's my big mistake. Our town clerk, Kathy Ball, is sitting back in the audience, and we couldn't run this meeting without her. I've got 58 pages worth of words here, just kidding. But I do have a bit of an opening statement to perhaps save a little time. First, no smoking on school grounds. Second, emergency exits are all around you, so no problem getting out. We do have a designated area for non-registered people in the bleachers to your right rear as you face me. And if you've not been checked out by the supervisor of the checklist or are able assistance, I ask you to please move it. To assist in any standing vote, we've distributed voting cards, which I ask you to sign if you haven't, and promptly display whenever a vote occurs. If you haven't signed them, please do. You won't be able to vote without them. When you leave, I ask you to turn them into the checklist table. First of all, if you leave early, then somebody else can't use the card. If you leave when the meeting's over, it's less litter if it's turned in there. Okay. If we do have a written ballot, you need to show your voting cards, and a mark will be made on them as you are handed a ballot. Any ballots cast on a written ballot must be cast whole. I will not recognize as a valid vote any partial ballot, one that's torn in half or more. I'll not recognize any ballot crunched up into a little ball. At most, please simply fold them in half or keep them whole. All speakers must use the microphones and identify yourselves. Even if I'm married to you, I need your name. That's because we need it for the minutes. We need it for the television that's being recorded. Frankly, I'm getting so old I can't remember my own name.
Fred.
Oh, Fred, okay, thank you. Since 1996, we've been operating under the auspices of RSA 4012 and 4013, popularly known as Senate Bill 2. Under the system, we're undertaking the deliberative session or ballot determination hearing. Under this system, we will not be voting to pass or defeat any warrant article at tonight's meeting. All warrant articles will be on the official ballot, which will be voted on in the second session to be held March 8th, 2011 at Goffstown High School for District 1 and the Bartlett Elementary School in Bernardville for District 5 from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We'll be discussing tonight Articles 3 through 14. Unless otherwise noted, these articles are open for discussion, debate, and amendment. If an amendment to a particular warrant article is properly presented and adopted by this meeting, the article, as amended, will go on the warrant for voting in March. If the article is not amended, the article, as it is currently written, will appear on the ballot. With respect to amendments, please remember that the purpose of the warrant is to place the subject before the voters on March 8th. Therefore, we can't move to pass or defeat any article tonight, but only to amend. We'll have no vote tonight. When discussion ends, we simply move on to the next article. A motion on an article is a motion simply to bring it to the floor. That's all, for discussion. If an article fails to receive a motion or second, it's going on the ballot as printed, on the warrant as printed. It goes on automatically and doesn't need to be moved to the ballot. Once brought to the floor by a motion and second, then it can be discussed and the article can be amended. Amendments to any of the articles presented tonight are permissible within certain constraints. An amendment to any of the non-money articles is permissible as long as the amendment is germane to the subject of the article. It can't be totally unrelated. Any amendment that is offered that is not related to the subject matter of the article will be ruled out of order and not accepted by the moderator. As of this last Friday, Governor Lynch signed into law HB House Bill 77, which amends RSA 4013. As a result of a 2008 New Hampshire Supreme Court case, some towns in the last couple of years have removed all words in an article after the words 2C. So all that appeared on the warrant was 2C, which essentially removed the subject matter entirely. It happened a couple of times here last year in a couple of articles. But as a result of the signing of House Bill 77, that's no longer legal. The subject matter of the article must not be deleted. It can be the article can be amended, but the subject matter cannot be removed. Amendments to money articles may only change the dollar figures appear in the article. It may not change any wording except as to provide further clarification to the changed dollar figure. All amendments must be presented in writing to the moderator. We have forms for that purpose, and Lionel will be happy to hand them to you. Proposed amendments must be moved to the floor and seconded before any discussion will be allowed on the amendment. And then the discussion that is allowable is of the amendment only. A vote will then be taken on the amendment. After the vote, discussion will continue on the main article as amended if the amendment passes, or as stated originally if the amendment is defeated. At the conclusion of the discussion of the main article, there will be no vote taken. We'll simply go on to the next article. The previous question is still a procedure that will apply to this meeting. After an article is discussed or an amendment has been discussed, a voter may attempt to cut off further debate by moving the previous question. This motion is not debatable. A yes vote on the previous questions means that the debate will end. A no vote means it will continue the debate. A simple majority is required to pass a motion to call the previous question, therefore end debate. Motion to reconsider can only be made by a person who has voted on the prevailing side. Anybody may second it. Moderators have the right under New Hampshire law to establish rules of procedure. Although Robert's Rules of Order will be generally used as my guide, they will not be definitive. We're going to follow Fred's rules tonight. And anytime if you question Fred's rules, you may challenge the moderator and by vote overrule me. The purpose of this is I don't want to argue with somebody what page 456 of a book says. I'd rather just either agree or disagree and go on from there. And the meeting will be conducted as expeditiously as fairly as possible. No person may speak at this meeting without recognition by the moderator, and I'll do my best to recognize all people who wish to speak in an orderly fashion until it's clear that people have had the opportunity to make points pertinent to the article. In the interest of meeting brevity, I would request that if a previous speaker has made a point, please don't feel obligated to get up and say, I agree, or repeat the point in different words. Assume people heard it and understood it. If you have new light to shed on the matter, then of course we do want to hear from you. Secondly, there's no room for filibusters. I'd like to limit the initial presentation of an article to no more than 5 minutes as a rough rule of thumb, and any follow-on discussion to roughly 3 minutes. This is not hard and fast, but if you go on too long, you're going to get a sense of the meeting whether it should continue or have you cut off. Keep in mind also that you may disagree 100% with another speaker, but assume that you both have the best interests of the town at heart, even if you don't see eye to eye. It's perfectly appropriate to discuss and debate issues. That's what makes a democracy. However, it is not okay, never okay, to make personal attacks or to question people's motives. I'll cut that off immediately. Please keep any emotion towards an issue and not towards any individual. If a request for a secret ballot is made, it must be made in writing prior to any vote on matter under consideration. It must be made at least with five voters present and on the checklist, and I'll ask you to stand. After a voice vote is made, and when there is a question or a division of the House, a written request may be made for a secret ballot, but then it requires 7 signatures, not 5. We have forms for that purpose, and Lionel's got them. I will not accept any in advance, but only at the time the article is being considered. This is a town meeting under state law and not an election. As such, we can follow our own way and are not bound by state election laws. The laws that do exist for a town meeting under RSA 4012 and 4013 do not require me to read the warrant. Since there is no requirement, I'll not do so unless you all insist. And we'll take up the articles one at a time. Seeing no rush to make me read it, we'll go on to the first article, which is Article 1. Shall the town adopt Amendment 1, amending the following sections of the zoning ordinance for Goffstown, New Hampshire, as amended on March 9th, 2010 as follows? No, that's not it. Article 3. Like I thought. There's a money article, not Article 1. To the see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate for the operation expense and commitments of the town government, the budget approved by the Budget Committee, in the amount of $18,927,383. This budget will be predicated by estimated revenues in the amount of $7,504,008. The Sewer Enterprise Fund of $1,689,200 is included in this revenue amount and in the appropriations requested in this article. The EMS Special Revenue Fund is $610,932 is included in this revenue amount and in the appropriations requested in this article. The motion on the operating budget shall be the following, with only appropriation amounts subject to amendment. Shall the town of Goffstown raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth in the budget posted with a warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $18,927,383. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $19,925,863, which is the same as last year, with certain amendments required by previous action of the town of Goffstown or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013 and 6 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Note this article operating budget does not include appropriations in any other warrant article. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500 and Budget Committee 1100. And I recognize Selectman Gross.
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 3 be placed on the ballot as written.
And second was made by Selectman Devanza. Did you like to speak to the article?
Yes, please. Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Gross, and I am Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. I'm also the Budget Committee representative from the board. And at first, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the Budget Committee for all their hard work, especially Chairman Cloutier. It's a tough job trying to try to manage discussions with 16 people around the table. You did a wonderful job, Dan. I just want to thank you for that. Also want to thank the members of the Budget Committee. While many of us had some heated discussions, a lot of back and forth, this was a very hard-working Budget Committee. They did a lot of work, a lot of data, a lot of spreadsheets. Just want to thank them for all their hard work. Before you is the town's operating budget, and what you're going to see first off is that it's about $1 million less than the default budget. You might ask yourself why. Well, quite frankly, the reason why is because we've placed some of our capital items into special articles that you'll see later on. But I'm going to just briefly talk to you about what some of our goals were this year. The Board of Selectmen had a recognition of the current economic conditions, and in discussions with the Budget Committee, we set forth our goal as to have a level funded or level tax rate budget. That was our primary goal, and that's what we directed our department heads to put together budgets that had that in mind. And it was not easy. One of the reasons why it's not easy is because there's an ever increasing demand for services. Just look at the last month as a primary example of that, of all the snow that we've had. And I concur with what the moderator said. Our DPW, our police, our fire, our departments really have worked hard to keep our roads safe. And I've seen some accidents over the last few days, and the responders were there very quickly. Just a really tremendous job by our departments to keep our town safe. But with that, there comes a cost, and we're trying to balance those services and the costs that are associated with them with your ability as taxpayers to pay the bill. So with that said, we introduced a budget that was, for the most part, level funded. As you go through in your packet, you will see our line by lines by department. It's the 2011 town budget, and you'll also see another page with our revenues. As you can see, for the most part, most of these departments were very close to being level funded. Some of them might have been slightly down, some of them the same as, say, last year, and some departments, notably maybe the library or Parks and Rec, had a slight increase. With a down economy, one thing we've seen is that more and more people are staying locally. They're taking advantage of our wonderful library and Parks and Rec programs, and there was a need to justify some slight increases in that regard. For the most part, what you're going to see is, from our operating budget, the reductions that you saw to get to that level tax rate were really in the area of CIP, the Capital Improvements Program. And last year, we had 3 pieces of equipment, which we're going to be talking about tonight. And one was a fire pumper tanker. The other one was a solid waste vehicle, and then is our road program. So you're going to see those as special articles, and we'll be talking about that later. And basically what we did is, working with the Budget Committee, we separated those out from the budget this year to give you, the voters, the opportunity to vote each one on its merits. Of course, you'll hear from the board later on tonight. We believe that all of those purchases are reasonable, they're all justified. But that's the primary reason for the decrease in the overall operating budget. And with that, if there are any questions, I can certainly entertain.
If there are, why don't you use the other mic so I can go to the left, so that I can continue moderating the meeting as best I can. Are there any questions? I recognize Mr. Byrd.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to make a motion.
Your name, sir?
John Byrd, A Street, Austin.
Please.
And I'd like to make a motion.
An amendment?
Amendment, yes.
Okay, and the amendment is?
You want paper?
Yes, but why don't you read it and then hand it to me?
I would like to reduce the budget of the town operating budget by $186,000, well, $186,329.
Okay,
And
you have it in writing.
Yes, I do.
And would you, after handing it to me, would you like to speak to your amendment? Okay. I also have the form for give it that to me at the time, Sean. I'll take that when the time comes. I have in writing to reduce the town operating budget by $186,329. And your purpose for your discussion for this?
The reason for me making this amendment is the selectmen wanted a number, which is $186,329 less than this. The selectmen worked very hard. The budget committee worked extremely hard. This is $186,329 above what the selectmen wanted. I was against the motion that was made at the Budget Committee. I believe what the selectmen offered for the amount was a good amount. And I just believe that, we should just stick to what the selectmen wanted. If you watch the video, when the motion was made, Scott Gross looked like a deer in headlights. He was like, okay. I think he was confused on, I probably shouldn't speak for Scott.
No, that's not correct.
But I believe the 186, 329 for the selectmen's budget is just in excess of what the taxpayer should not have to pay. So in this motion, well, in the selectmen's budget, everybody gets their raises, there's 3 police cars, everybody gets their benefits. Everything's going to run the way the selectmen set the budget to run.
Any further discussion on the amendment to reduce the budget by 186,329? Mr. Cody? Is there a second?
See, that was my point of order.
Okay.
I was wondering if it was seconded because there's no use to discuss it unless it's first second.
But I want to hear a second.
I seconded it. Richard Medium on the paper.
Okay, it's been duly motioned and seconded. Richard Meeting was the second. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Recognize Selectman Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Essentially, what I'd like you to do is if you could go to our town budget, and it's the second page, it talks about capital improvement program. I'll wait a few seconds till you turn to that page. All right. If you could take a look under code 49010, it's entitled Land and Improvements. And what you can't see is the third number over, it's $1,940,414. That is the amount of money that we raised and appropriated for our road program for this current year. Now I want you to hop over to the left a little bit, where it says $2,316,627. That's what we raised and appropriated for our road program in 2009. Now what I'd like you to do is to go to the column all the way to the far right, where it says $1,010,000. That is what the Board of Selectmen put in our budget for the 2011 road program. So as you can see, it's $1.3 million less than 2009, and it's almost $1 million less than 2010. Now you will see also in our warrant, there will be another article. It's for nearly $500,000. And with hopefully your support this evening and the voter support of the polls, if this budget and that article passes, it would be approximately $1.5 million plus the funds that Mr. Burt just mentioned. So the money that was added back by the Budget Committee at our last meeting would go directly to the road program. As you can see, it's not getting cheaper to resurface and reclaim our roads. It's actually getting more expensive. They're petroleum-based products, and it costs a lot of money to reclaim our roads and to repair our roads. This is the place where the Board of Selectmen reluctantly, tried to cut some money to have a level tax rate. So I was surprised when the Budget Committee voted to add back additional funds, but I thought it was a very wise decision to do so, because our roads are in need of repair. We've spent millions of dollars as an investment, and I don't want to steal Selectman Pierce's thunder later on, but that's the reasons why the Board of Selectmen would urge you to defeat this motion, because this money is to repair and maintain our roads, which are in great need. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion towards the amendment? Seeing none, I think you had a request also, Mr. Burt? Is there more discussion? Yes, sir?
Mark Campbell, Grove Street. I'm against this amendment. I also want to thank the Budget Committee and the town of Selectmen. Being part of the Parks and Rec Commission, I know that the Selectmen spend an awful lot of time with not only all of the departments, mine specifically, I can say we spend an awful lot of time trying to be able to bring a smart budget forward. And I know the Budget Committee worked their tails off, and I want to thank you guys very much for listening to the public when they had the public hearing a couple weeks ago. And from that, they were able to then go back and say, you know what, maybe we need to listen to the public. They want us to put more money back in. And they did that. The Budget Committee voted to add that money back in. It was voted on. You didn't win the vote, and now we're brought forward with an amendment again. I don't think it's the right way to do it. The Selectmen worked hard to try to bring a budget forward. It's not like that's the one that they wanted, but they were, again, listening to the townspeople. And now to take, 180 whatever back, it's foolish in my mind. I mean, our roads are not great in the first place, and if we keep cutting money from it, then all the things that we like about this town, the things that do make it the great town that it is, it's going to get worse. People won't want to come. And then you start adding up the car bills because all of a sudden our cars are going to start getting trashed. I mean, it's not a smart move. I mean, a penny saved is, in this instance, is not smart.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'm going to call a vote. I have a request in writing to have this to be a written secret ballot. And I've got 5 signatures, and I'm going to make them stand and show their voter card. John Burt is one of them. Okay. Daniel Kluter. Okay. Jennifer Gresham, are you here? Okay. William Gordon, Bill Gordon is here, and Richard Fletcher. All right. Seeing that it's a let's. Okay. Go ahead.
Can we have those who are the counters, please? Table over here.
The process, if we give them 1 second to get over there, is we've got 3 voting booths set up. Doesn't make any difference what your last name is. Go to any one where the line's shortest, and you'll have your voter card checked off, and you'll get a ballot, and put it in the box, and we'll go from there. And I'll start the process now. Yes. All right. If I can call the meeting back to order. The amendment to reduce Article 3 by 186,329 was defeated. The vote was yes, 19, no, 91, for a total of 110 votes. We'll move on. Since it was defeated, we'll go on to discuss Article 3 unamended. Any further discussion with respect to Article 3, the operating budget? Seeing none, we'll move on. Article 3 will be placed on the warrant as presented tonight. Article 4, to see if the town will vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the town of Goffstown by its Board of Selectmen and the New England Benevolent Police Association, local number 24, representing the patrolman, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits for the current staffing level: 2011 0, 2012 33,007, 2013 42,311, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $0 for the current fiscal year 2011, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels in accordance with the most recent collective bargaining agreement. This appropriation is in addition to Article 3, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 410 and Budget Committee 831. And for purposes of Article 4, I'll recognize Selectman Devanza. Oh, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Your name?
Mark Campbell, Grove Street. I wanted to make a motion before we get to this article, and please forgive me because I don't know the exact verbiage, but I'd like to make a motion to not.
Are you restricting to even on Article 3?
Correct.
You're making a motion to restrict reconsideration.
Correct.
Is there a second to that? Okay. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, it's restricting reconsideration on Article 3, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is so restricted. I just read Article 4. I will not reread it. I'll recognize Selectman Devanza to the mic over there. Oh, okay. Huh? It's pointed out to me, and it was in my script here, that this particular article cannot be amended. It's a money article, cannot be amended. It's because it's a collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Monitor. Hope everybody can hear me. This article was recommended by both the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee. This is the result of collective bargaining, negotiation. And in the beginning of that, the Board of Selectmen had 5 goals to achieve during the negotiations. The first goal was no financial impact in the year 2011. Also to increase employee contribution to health insurance and get everybody on the same health insurance, all the employees. To have no compounding of steps and COLA to go on as the years go on. Also to mitigate the Evergreen Law.
Did you move this to the floor?
I'll move it to the floor.
Was it been seconded? Okay. Selectman Capasano, second. Continue discussion.
Thank you. As I said, to mitigate the Evergreen Law, and the 5th one was to mitigate any potential spiking assessments that the town would occur through the New Hampshire retirement system. The Board of Selectmen feels that the goals were achieved as follows. There is no financial impact on this contract in the year 2011, the current year coming. Members will be on the same health insurance as non-union with larger co-pays, thus reducing the premium. The 2012 has no steps for any employees, but only COLA, and 2013 has only COLA. There are no steps in the last year. There is language that limits the additional future obligations when this contract ends. The fact that there are no steps in the final year of the contract mitigates the evergreen, because that will not allow there to be any additional steps. Since there are no steps in the last year, there are no increases if the town is in negotiations and there is no contract. The other thing that it does is also negates the any potential spiking that would be in the evergreen from the New Hampshire retirement system. That is, in the last 3 years, when employees increase their income, their retirement is based on those 3 years. And if we have that, an employee is over 25% of their income in those 3 years, we would get what they call a spiking assessment. But we won't get that because of the language that's in the contract, because any increase that they would get would be 121 days after their last day of employment, so that negates it. And again, this was recommended by both the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen.
Any discussion on Article 4? Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go on to Article 5. Thank you, Selectman Devanza, but you may stay there, because going on to Article 5, this is another of the same nature. It cannot be amended. It's a result of a collective bargaining agreement. To see if the town of Goffstown will vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the town of Goffstown by the Board of Selectmen and New England Benevolent Police Association, Local Number 124, representing the dispatchers and clerks at the police department, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing level: 2011, 0; 2012, 9378; 2013, 18902, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $0 for the current fiscal year 2011, with such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels in accordance with the most recent collective bargaining agreement. This appropriation is in addition to Article 3, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 410 and Budget Committee 921. Selectman Devanza, are you moving this to the floor?
Yes, I move Article 5 be placed on ballot.
And is it seconded by somebody? Selectman Pierce seconded. Okay. Would you like to discuss this?
Absolutely. Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. This is a new union, and this represents their first contract. Again, the Board of Selectmen had the same goals as the previous contract. This was recommended by the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee. There is no fiscal impact in the first year of this contract, which is a 3-year contract. The group was already on the same health insurance as non-union with the higher co-pays. In this contract, a single person will now contribute a higher amount to their health insurance plan. In 2012, there was a 3.25 COLA. There are no steps, and in 2013, there were also no steps. There is the same language in this contract as the patrolman's contract that eliminates the evergreen law, and also the same type of, actually these, there is no potential in spiking from the New Hampshire retirement system on this one, since the assessment does not impact the group, so mitigation for that was not necessary.
Any discussion on Article 5?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
I have a question.
Get to the mic, please, and introduce yourself.
My name is Ruth Gage, and it's just...
Get closer and the mic a little lower.
My question is about the local number, and I'm wondering if there's a type of error here. Under Article 4, it says local number 24, and under Article 5, it says local number 124. Are there two separate locals, or is there a typo?
I'll let the selectman answer that.
They're two separate locals. Right. It's the same organization, but two different numbers, because one is dispatch and the other one is patrol.
Okay, but normally,
Okay.
it's a union, that's why I... Thank you.
The follow-on comment away from the mic is a union, that's why I question. But there were two separate unions. All right, any further discussion on Article 5? Seeing none, we'll go on to Article 6. Thank you, Selectman Devanza. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $499,524 for the purpose of reinstating the Budget Committee's reduction of the approved CIP road plan. Passage of this article will also indicate the voters' desire to keep the costs of the road plan and the annual operating budget. This appropriation is in addition to Article 3, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500 and Budget Committee 1020, and I recognize Selectman Pierce.
I move Article 5 be placed on the ballot.
Second by Selectman Gross. Article 6 is...
I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong script. I move Article 6 to the road plan be placed.
And I presume your second was for Article 6. Very good. Selectman Gross, would you like to speak to it, Selectman Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We have this special article on the warrant because about 1/3 of the Selectmen's road plan, in a compromise with the Budget Committee, was moved off of the general operating funds and placed into a special article. A little bit of history. The road plan for this town was instituted in 2002, 2003. It requires about a little over $2 million per year to effectively rebuild the roads in this town over a period of time. The town was pretty effective staying on that plan for 3 years. And lately, though, in 2009, 2010, we've slipped to being about 80% effective against that road plan. The Director of Public Works, honoring that original plan, originally wanted almost $2.5 million to keep at the 80% level of effectiveness against that plan. The Selectmen, recognizing the stress in the economy,
decided to take $1 million off that. And we recognize that what you delay this year, we're probably going to have to try to make up in the following year. In a compromise with the budget committee, we then moved about one-third of that, or $500,000, the exact amount on the article, to be a special article. If this article were to fail at the election, we would drop down to about 75% effectivity against the road plan, and it would be even harder to get caught back up in the future. Also, as part of the special article, you see the words where the voters would want the road plan to remain in the general operating funds in future budgets. And that's because we believe the road plan is a recurring expense, not to be singled out as a special article every year. So bottom line, I urge that the placement of this article be on the warrant as it's written.
Any discussion with respect to Article 6? Recognize Dan Cludier.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dan Kluge, Riverview Park Road. I noticed Article 6 says for the purpose of reinstating the Budget Committee's reduction. And I'm surprised to see those words in the article, because when I look at the back, it says it's both recommended by the Selectmen and the Budget Committee, and I'm wondering why you would want to put words that look to me like they're adversarial. That's part one. Part two, is there a legal... I don't understand why we would put in here the voters' desire to keep the cost of the road plan in the annual operating budget. I don't know the legal ramifications. I can understand the concept, but if someone could answer the question, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Somebody like to address the question?
Okay. Just again to try to provide a little bit of history, this was a separate article for, I'm thinking 6 or 7 years, maybe it's 8, don't quote me on it. And then we heard loud and clear from the community that they wanted this rolled into the operating budget, and a few years ago, you the voters voted to put it into the operating budget. So again, I think the Board of Selectmen were reluctant to put it out, and one of the reasons why we are somewhat reluctant is because once you get your road paved, you may be less inclined to vote for these special articles, or if you know that your road is not up on the list in the upcoming year. This is an ongoing process, so that's one of the reasons why we prefer it in the operating budget, and also as I stated before, this has been a separate article for so many years, and we did include it. As for the language, if you want to amend it, you can amend it. I don't have any problems, with that. There wasn't any intent. I can't speak for the board, but I'm not aware of any intent on our part for it to be perceived as adversarial. It was a reduction from our original operating budget, but if somebody wants to amend it, I personally would not be upset about it.
Rather than blaming the Budget Committee, blame me.
Yeah, sure.
It's all my fault. Always is. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move on. Did I hear? Are you going to make a motion? Get up to the mic so people can hear you.
I make the motion to restrict reconsideration.
Is there a second? Okay, second by Pam Manny. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of restricting reconsideration, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes. On to Article 7. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $550,000 for the purpose of purchasing a pumper tanker to replace a 92 fire engine and a 1989 tanker, and to fund this appropriation with $142,000 from the Fire Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund, $420,000 by taxation. This appropriation is in addition to Article 3, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500 and Budget Committee 930, and I recognize Selectman Campusano. Mr. Selectman Campusano, having not been by the mics, moved it to the floor with an amendment he wants to make. Is there a second to the motion? Okay, and your amendment, sir, is?
There's a typographical error. I move to amend $420,000 to $408,000.
That's the extent of the amendment. Okay, is the amendment second? I assume Selectman Devanza is second the amendment to change the amount in the motion from $420,000 to $408,000, and that amount is the amount appropriated by taxation. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, continuing with the article as amended to read $408,000 to be appropriated by taxation. Do you have any further discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Last year, the town sought to replace a 1992 Emergency 1 brand fire pumper. That article, which included the replacement of other town vehicles, did not pass at town meeting. Article 7 seeks funding to replace that 19-year-old emergency pumper and does not include any other vehicles. Our fire chief has designed the department's fleet deployment with an eye towards consolidation. In 2008, when one of the department's ladder trucks was mechanically unfit for service, the decision was made to reduce the fleet from 2 ladder trucks to 1. This lone remaining ladder truck was replaced in 2009, funded largely by an assistant firefighters grant. $712,000 from the federal grant was combined with tax funds contained in the fire department's capital reserve fund, which was approximately $300,000, to make that purchase. This year's request, again, seeks to streamline the department's fleet by combining 2 existing vehicles, Engine 5 and Tanker 5, into one combination tanker pumper. Engine 5 has been out of service this year and will not return to service as it is not cost-effective to repair and bring back to a useful condition. Tanker 5 is a 22-year-old vehicle and currently is in need of extensive body repairs, electrical repairs, and a new pump. The vehicle which this article represents will provide the replacement for both Engine 5 and Tanker 5. This reduction to the number of department vehicles serves to both reduce the overall annual operating cost of the fleet and to lengthen the time period between major vehicle replacements. This article seeks the authority to appropriate $550,000 for the purchase of that new tanker pumper, $142,000 of which will be withdrawn from the existing Fire Department Capital Reserve Fund, with the balance of $408,000 to be raised through taxation. Thank you.
Any discussion on Article 7? Seeing none, we'll move on. It will appear on the ballot with the correction to $408,000, otherwise it's printed. I just heard a motion to reconstruct by Selectman Campusano, seconded by Selectman Devanza. Any discussion on the motion to restrict? Seeing none, all those in favor in the motion to restrict Article 7, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is so restricted. Moving on to Article 8. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $247,000 for the purpose of purchasing an automated solid waste collection vehicle to replace the 2000 solid waste automated collection vehicle. This appropriation is an additional Article 3, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500 and Budget Committee 10-2-0, and I recognize Selectman Pierce.
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 8 be placed on the ballot.
Okay, and is there a second? A second by Selectman Capasano. Would you like to address the article?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This article provides for the routine scheduled replacement of a trash collection vehicle, as it's a routine expense that normally would have appeared in the capital improvement program. And during the budget formulation sessions between the board and the budget committee, a compromise was reached, and this vehicle's purchase was pulled out of the general operating funds and given individual status as a special article for more public oversight. The little bit of history: the Department of Public Works maintains a fleet of 3 waste collection vehicles. 2 of those 3 are the ones we see every week. One doing solid waste collection, the other one recycling collection. The 3rd vehicle is relegated to be a backup vehicle in case maintenance is needed on the first 2. Upon obtaining a new vehicle, as this article seeks to do, the normal practice is the new vehicle and then the next best vehicle become the primary operating trash collection vehicles. And the oldest vehicle, which in this case is a Volvo manufactured truck in the year 2000, is traded in or sold. The next oldest vehicle out of the 4 is then relegated back to being backup status. Our last trash collection vehicle was purchased 4 years ago, 2007. According to how the CIP is written now, the next collection vehicle would be 4 years into the future, in 2015. Purchasing a new trash collection vehicle every 4 years is a prudent action to ensure that we are able to maintain an effective, reliable, curbside trash pickup for this town. And I urge placement of this article on the warrant as it's written. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Selectman Pierce. Any discussion on Article 8? Seeing none, we shall move on. Article 9. I just heard a motion to restrict from Selectman Capasano, seconded by Selectman Pierce. Is there any discussion on a motion to restrict? Seeing none, all those in favor of a motion to restrict, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes. Article 9. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $15,000 for the purpose of supporting the nonprofit Goffstown Main Street Program, Inc. This appropriation is in addition to Article 3, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 500 and Budget Committee 1200, and I recognize Selectman Fournier.
I move that Article 9 be placed on the ballot.
Okay, is there a second?
Yes, second.
Selectman Gross seconded. Selectman Fournier, would you like to discuss the article?
Thank you. Most of us know that the Goffstown Main Street program is a group that hosts such events as Old Home Day, Friday Night Under the Lights, Concerts on the Common, and my favorite, Pumpkin Regatta. But they do a whole lot more. They work with local business owners to promote and market downtown. They foster tourism, they provide venues for local artists, but most of all, they build a strong sense of community. Main Street would not look the way it does today without this funding and the numerous volunteers who work year-round at making Goffstown a better place to live. This article was unanimously approved by the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Any discussion on Article 10? Article 9, rather. Yes. Lowell Van Ruden.
Lowell Van Ruden. I'm a member of the Goffstown Main Street Board of Directors. And on behalf of the Board of Directors, I'd like to thank both the Selectmen and Budget Committee for unanimously supporting this article. And I hope that everyone else will do the same. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on Article 9? Seeing none, we shall move on to Article 10. To see if the town will vote to... What do you say? Oh, you want a motion for restrict, not a motion for reconsideration. A motion to restrict Article 9. Is there a second to restrict? A second, Capasano. Selectman Capasano. There's now a motion duly made and seconded to restrict reconsideration of Article 9. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes. Article 10, to see if the town will vote to adopt an ordinance pursuant to RSA 3139C to allow for administrative enforcement of violations of any municipal code, ordinance, bylaw, or regulation, and for the collection of penalties to be used prior to the service of a formal summons and complaint. The system provides opportunities for persons who do not wish to contest violations to pay such violations penalties by mail. The proposed ordinance is available for viewing on the town's website and in the town clerk's office. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 311. I recognize Selectman Gross.
Mr. Moderator, I ask that you place Article 10 on the ballot, on the warrant.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, Selectman Pierce seconded to bring it to the floor. Would you like to address the articles, Selectman Gross?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We consider this more of a housekeeping endeavor for our town, especially for our town's prosecutor and our code enforcement officer. Essentially, we do have a variety of different ordinances. For the most part, our public is very good about abiding to the law. However, we do have a small group of citizens who sometimes neglect the law. And although we do ask that they comply, they happen to be cyclical in terms of their compliance, goes up and down. They comply and they don't comply, and we spend a lot of energy with phone calls and letters, and essentially our only recourse is to go to district court with these folks. This will give us one more tool in our belt for both our prosecutor and our code enforcement officer, which we can provide them with a written summons which they can pay by mail. And if they comply, then that's good. It saves the community a lot of aggravation. If they don't comply, then we do have to go the legal route and go to the courts. But this gives us one more, like I said, one more tool that we have to address the small handful of folks that either don't abide by, whether it be sign ordinances or noise ordinances or a handful of other things that we try to address on a daily basis. And I will tell you that from the board's perspective and from our prosecutor and our code enforcement officer, we see these letters every week. We get a copy of them, and it takes an awful lot of time to address these things in the process that we have now. So we're hoping this will help us streamline it a little bit. It's not going to be the cure-all, but it'll be, again, one more tool that we'll have to address it.
Thank you, Selectman Gross, for not putting me out as one of the perps. Any discussion on Article number 10? Seeing none, we'll move on. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to adopt a community revitalization tax relief incentive outlined in Chapter 79E of state law, and to designate 2 commercial areas as meeting the standards for an eligible district as set forth in RSA 79E2I of town as eligible for said incentive. 1, Canardville area, which includes 147 taxable parcels, and 2, Goffstown Village area, which includes 100 taxable parcels. A map identifying these parcels is available on the town's website and the town clerk's office. This plan has been endorsed by Goffstown Board of Selectmen, Goffstown Economic Development Council, and Goffstown Main Street Program to promote improvements and investments in said commercial districts, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 401, and I recognize Selectman Thornley.
I'd like to bring this article to the floor.
Say it? Okay, it's moved and seconded by Selectman Devanza to bring it to the floor. Would you like to address the article, Selectman Fournier?
Actually, I'd like to request that Derek Cohen to address this article. He's been working on this proposal for quite a while, and he would be the best person to give this subject.
I believe Derek Horn is the Economic Development Coordinator for the town. He's a non-resident, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, is there any objection to having Derek Horn address the audience? Seeing none, Mr. Horn, would you please step forward to the mic?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Economic Development Council has reviewed and recommended to the Board of Selectmen to propose adoption of RSA 79E, which is a tax incentive that was adopted by the state legislature in 2006. If adopted, it enables municipalities the opportunity to provide tax relief to encourage rehabilitation and reuse of buildings. And the two areas that the Board of Selectmen have placed on the warrant are in Pinardville and in the village, and they are shown on the maps in the handouts provided this evening. For existing buildings in those two revitalization districts, they would qualify for tax relief if they propose rehabilitation costs that would cost at least 15% of the building's assessment or $75,000, whichever is less, and their rehabilitation would need to provide some type of public benefit. They would need to demonstrate to the Board of Selectmen that it enhances downtown economic viability, that the property improves a culturally or historic important structure, that the rehabilitation promotes downtown development, or that it increases downtown housing. What this adoption of these provisions would allow the Board of Selectmen to do would be to decide at their discretion on applications brought forward by property owners. There would be a public hearing requirement, so input from the town would be brought on. And if they grant relief, the selectmen can grant relief for a period of 5 years. And again, the tax relief is for on the value of the new improvements. The base value of the property continues to be part of the tax base. And again, it's explained in the handout that was provided this evening, and I answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions with respect to Article 11, Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive? Seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, Selectman Gross wants to be recognized.
We've heard over the last few years about trying to increase our our tax base in the community. We are very heavily involved with our residential tax base, which means that the residential homeowners pay the lion's share of the taxes in our community. This is, again, another tool for the town to get more business tax base, which will, again, hopefully reduce the residential tax base. And this creates an incentive for folks who have a piece of property that needs some revitalization. And you probably have seen, whether it be the mill downtown or buildings in Bernardville, again, anywhere these zones are located, where someone now has an incentive to make improvements to their property, because the selectmen will now have the ability to abate taxes on those improvements for up to 5 years. So there may be projects that are out there where when a developer does the math, or a current business owner or property owner does the math and it's not quite working, this will give Economic Development Council and the Board of Selectmen, again, another tool that might sweeten that, might give them a bit of an incentive to revitalize or to redo their building. So I strongly urge everyone out there who has concerns about taxes. This, again, was endorsed by Economic Development, the Main Street program, and our board as a means of trying to lessen some of this tax burden on the residential taxpayers. So again, I urge you to support this.
Thank you, Selectman Gross. Any discussion on Article 12? Or 11, I'm sorry. Yeah. Seeing none, we'll move on to Article 12. Article 12 is presented by petition. I'll read the article and then recognize the petitioner. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to adopt an exemption for the disabled under the provisions of RSA 7237B as follows. The exemption from assessed value for qualified taxpayers shall be $80,000 off their assessment. To qualify, the person must apply in writing to the selectmen no later than April 15th of the tax year, be eligible under Title II or Title 16, you see in Title 16 of the Federal Social Security Act, must have been a New Hampshire resident for at least 5 years, must occupy the property as his principal place of abode as of April 1st of the tax year, must own property individually or jointly, or if owned by a spouse, They must have been married for at least 5 years, had in the calendar year preceding April 1st a net income from all sources of not more than $40,000 if single and $60,000 if married, own assets not in excess of $200,000, excluding the value of the person's actual residence, and up to the minimum single-family residential lot size specified in the local zoning ordinance, submitted by petition not recommended by the Select Board of Selectmen 401. The petitioner is?
My name is Dan Wagner, and I'm a disabled person. Town of Goffstown has exemptions for the blind, the veterans, and the elderly. They don't recognize the 100% disabled people. And I feel that putting out a petition for people that are disabled, okay, maybe it'll help someone, okay, with their property taxes that they couldn't afford before. If we put down like an $80,000 off on their assessment of their property tax, to qualify for a single person household, total income will be between $13,400 and $40,000. And for a married couple, the total income will be between $20,400 and $60,000. In either case, the total assets must be between $35,000 and $200,000. That excludes the value of the person's actual residence and up to the minimum single-family residential lot size specified in the local zoning ordinance. And to qualify, the person must apply in writing to the selectmen no later than April 15th. The resident must have resided in New Hampshire for at least 5 years and must be the principal occupant of the property as of April 1st of that tax year. And if married and own the property jointly, then they must be married at least 5 years. I make a motion that Article 12 be moved to the floor.
Okay, is there a second? I should have asked for that first. Is there a second?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, Carlos Adams made a second. And you just discussed it? You can't vote, sorry. I can't, my eyes are getting better.
Good job, Tom. Very good voice. Ventriloquist.
Okay, is there any discussion on Article 12? Yes. State your name.
I'm just curious what this is modeled after. Did you look at what other towns have? It's called.
Through the moderator, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But you asked the question,
Yeah.
what is it modeled after?
Yes, exactly.
Would you like to respond?
I did call the city of Manchester, the assessor's office, to give me what they have right now, okay, on their books. I have a friend that lives in Manchester, and the city of Manchester takes off $171,000 off their assessed property tax, okay, depending on what the person makes. It's around $171,000. I'm not asking for that amount because we are a smaller town in the city of Manchester. So it gave me like a tool for an amount, and I went by what I thought would be reasonable.
Did you have a follow-on question?
I'm curious as to what the Board of Selectmen's reasoning was for not recommending it, just looking for.
I'll let them address that when they choose to stand up. Okay, I'll recognize Scott Bartlett, who's the town assessor.
Thank you. My name is Scott Bartlett. I'm a resident of Goffstown on 22 Warren Avenue. I'm also the town assessor. I do have a motion to make an amendment.
Is it in writing? Is it in writing?
Yes.
Okay, would you present it, please? Okay, and it says changes are shown in red on attached sheet. And the amendment is change.
And go ahead. Like to speak to it?
Yes.
Two of the class.
Is there a second to the amendment?
I second.
Okay, you want? I'm sorry? Yeah, okay.
There are two changes that are basically just technical. The first adds the word "the" for the word "property," which is consecutive is added before the word year on the seventh line of the article. And this is in order to be consistent with the applicable statute. That particular word doesn't appear in statute, it doesn't need to be there to be legal. There are 4 other recommended changes, and I will go over them and then I'll explain my reasoning for them. The 4 changes that I'm proposing are made in order to make this exemption consistent with the age 65 elderly exemption. We do currently have an elderly exemption, and there are 3 different categories: age 65, age 75, and age 80. The exemption amount of $80,000 is changed to $45,000. The income levels of $40,000 for single and $60,000 for married are changed to $35,000 and $50,000 respectively. And the asset limit is changed from $200,000 to $150,000. Under the current wording, Article 12 establishes an exemption amount that is greater than the current elderly exemption for the 65 age and also for the 75 age. It also establishes an income and assets level that is greater than any level, the elderly exemption. By having a disability exemption that creates levels that are higher than the elderly exemption, it causes a problem when a disabled person reaches the age of 65. At age 65, a person that is disabled will no longer qualify for the disabled exemption, is then qualified for the 65 for the elderly exemption. With this wording, it causes the potential for 2 things to happen. Number 1, if that person still qualifies for the exemption, the elderly exemption now, they would receive a reduction in their exemption amount. There's also a possibility because of the word that the income levels and the asset levels are different, that a person who is receiving this exemption as a disabled person, once they reach the age of 65, they would no longer qualify at all to use the exemption completely. It is recommended by myself, also a number of assessors that I have spoken to about this issue, that the disabled exemption should be at the same level as the age 65 level. Now, not all communities do that. Manchester, which is one of the communities that does not. However, they've enacted other legislation and other wording that gets rid of this difficulty that's caused between the disability exemption and the elderly exemption. That wording is not in here. It's other language that would need to be added. Most towns that I have spoken with to match the 65 age and the disability exemption if they have both of them. And that is the recommendation that I made tonight.
Okay, the amendment has been duly made and seconded. Is there any discussion towards the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call a vote on the amendment. The amendment is to add a couple of words to match the state law, which is it must own the property. Add April 1st of the tax year must own the property individually assigned, so it adds the word the. It adds the word consecutive after 5, so it's 5 consecutive years, and it changes the amounts. $45,000 rather than $80,000 off the assessment. The income range of $35,000 for single and $50,000 if married, changing $40,000, $60,000 down to those amounts, and changing the total assets from $200,000 down to $50,000. With those changes in the amendment, I didn't see any further discussion on it. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, we're back to the main article as amended. Is there any further discussion on the main article now as amended? Selectman Gross.
Jen, this is in response to your inquiry. The board did not really discuss the merits of Article 12, this disability exemption. Frankly, we were concerned because we do not know what the impact is going to be. That is why we did not recommend it. In the past, when we had elderly exemptions or we had veterans exemptions, there was some study done. The petitioner or petitioners came forward. Most recently was the elderly exemption. There was quite a bit of a discussion around the elderly exemption. We had a pretty good idea of what that amount would be. And what I want to share with everyone is that whenever you have these types of exemptions, it takes away monies that one group of people may pay for taxes, and then it redistributes it amongst everyone else. So whether it be a veterans tax exemption or whether it be an elderly exemption, those two groups might get credits or exemptions, but then everyone else then has to pay for that. We did not know what type of impact Article 12 would have, and it came, again, via petition. We didn't have any discussion with the petitioner or petitioners, and that is why we are not recommending it.
Any further discussion on Article 12? Yes, Mr. Cloutier.
Dan Cloutier, Riverview Park Road. I was wondering if the petitioner could give us the answer to that question that Scott posed. What is the perceived impact? It's hard to vote on something if you don't know what's going to happen. Number two, someone, I believe, at the town level is going to have to do the administration on this. And do we have an idea of what the administrative time would be for one application? And then we could multiply that out by a perceived number if we have that from the petitioner.
Now, what exactly did you want to know on the first part? I don't.
How many people will apply and what will the cost be?
I don't really know how many people stay in this town.
I can't even hear you. You're right.
I said I don't know how many people live in the town of Goffstown that are disabled. I know 4 of them, but that's all I know.
Okay, thank you. And would one of the selectmen like to address the administrative cost aspect of the question from Mr. Cloutier?
Dan, if I was to give a good guess here, it would probably be about an hour of time to meet with someone at town hall to discuss it. Then again, there's also processing. The Board of Selectmen signs off on each one of those. From there, a tax collector and others have to get involved. It's probably an hour or two, per application.
Any other hands up? Mr. Bartlett, did you have your hand? Okay. Any further discussion on Article 12 as amended? Yes, Foley. Jennifer Foley?
Jen Foley, yeah. I'm just wondering what it means to be disabled in terms of, it says to be eligible to Title II, Title 16 of the Federal Social Security Act. I just don't know what that captures. What's the net? Do you know how disabled is defined under those two titles?
I assume if somebody's on disability, federal Social Security disability, they would qualify, but I don't know.
Okay. So then what's...
Okay, I went online and I found the publication of the Social Security Act. And Title II is for federal old age survivors and disability insurance benefits. And then it goes on to reduction of insurance benefits, overpayments and underpayments. It keeps going on and on. That's the Title II. Title 16 is for grants to states for aid to the aged, blind, or disabled. It's also a supplemental security income for the aged, blind, or disabled. And it goes on and lists more.
So I guess I would just want to comment that that means that this disability, if this was passed, could always be changed by what the federal Congress decides disabled. So Goffstown would lose the ability to be defining what this class of disabled people were. So I just want to point that out.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 12 as amended? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on. Article 13. To see if the town will vote to establish a police detail revolving fund pursuant to RSA 3195H. The money received from charges for services shall be allowed to accumulate from year to year and shall not be considered part of the town's general fund. The town treasurer shall have custody of all monies in the fund and shall pay out the same upon the order of the Board of Selectmen. These funds may be expended only for police detail-related expenses, and no expenditure shall be made in such a way as to require the expenditure of other town funds which have not been appropriated for that purpose. submitted by petition not recommended by the Board of Selectmen 401, and the petitioner is, state your name and move it to the floor.
Eric Serino, Norman Road, Goffstown.
And are you moving the Article 13 to the floor?
I wish to, please.
Is there a second? And the second is by whom?
Jeff Bernard.
Jeff Penard, thank you. Would you like to discuss Article 13?
I would.
I'd like to say that basically this article is not tax or won't cost the taxpayers any money. Basically, we're just moving it out of the operating budget of the chief of police, police department, and putting it into a separate fund. I've done a little research, and the smaller towns that we not compete with, but that were the same in size, Dunbar and Boston, where they all use this account. One of the reasons we brought this petition forward was when we get to the point that we have debates in this town for presidential debates, the chief of police has to come to the Board of Selectmen and he has to estimate what the cost of his detailed funds are going to be. Now, unless he has a crystal ball and can see the future, he doesn't know how much it's going to cost. Sometimes these details at St. A's, these debates cost a lot of money, depending on who's hosting Fox News or CNN. So he has to basically go to the Board of Selectmen and say, this year, I'd like to put in my detail fund, estimated $200,000. That's what I think it's going to cost to pay all those officers all this extra money. With that being said, if he gets that money granted to him, and it basically is our taxing, we're taxed on that money. And if he doesn't use it all, we're paying taxes on that money that basically he doesn't spend it all in detail, potentially has to give it back to the town of Goffstown, which then goes into general fund. So, in a sense, this is actually going to help us save money as taxpayers, because maybe not this year, it's already budgeted, but next year, and years following, if it passes, it's going to be its own self-funding fund, basically, or account. So then the chief will have to go to the Board of Selectmen or the Budget Committee and ask or estimate how much money it's going to cost for a special duty pay or his detail pay. It'll basically be its own account, off to the side, managed by what it said by the treasurer, and it's still going to be in control of the Board of Selectmen. It's not going to be a slush fund for the police department. It's not going to be anything to, try to get around any of the spike system or anything like that. It's basically just going to move from his operating budget into its own account. It's not going to cost anybody or the taxpayers any extra money to do this.
Thank you. Any discussion on Article 14? Article 13? Okay, ma'am?
Elizabeth DePool. I would just like to know why the selectmen did not recommend this. And do you need an amendment to correct a typo?
Typos don't need amendments, they can be fixed.
Okay.
With just a typo. But what is the typo?
On the second to last line, these funds, the word maybe, and it should be two words, they may be.
Thank you. I still have Selectman Gross Sturdy to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 13 is actually not new to the board. We discussed placing this warrant article ourselves on the ballot. So in many respects, we understand the necessity of a revolving fund, and if I could, the reason why we decided not to include it on this year's ballot was primarily due to the accounting. We have a very outdated accounting package right now. For those who work in town hall, they know that. We had it in our capital improvements plan to replace our accounting software this year, and we deferred it. This is a very, very expensive process. It deals with all of our payroll, etc. So we did not necessarily, we didn't believe, please don't get the impression that we don't believe in this particular fund. It was just this year we decided to defer it because we're trying to get another accounting software package next year that will enable us to do this a lot easier. And as I think Mr. Cloutier mentioned in the previous article, there are administrative costs when you have these types of funds. And with a better accounting software package, we'll be able to do that a lot easier. I do want to also highlight what Mr. Serino said, is that it is difficult for a police chief to try to budget what these details may be in a given year. And sometimes it's, in an off-election year, it can be somewhat easy. But when you go through these political primaries, if he is off by $5, $10, $20,000, $30, $40, $50,000, that has to come out of his budget. Now, even though we get revenue, it does, it screws things up pretty good. So, again, the Board of Selectmen is not against this particular revolving fund. It was just the timing of it, because it doesn't jive well with the fact that our accounting software right now is antiquated, and this would be very cumbersome for us to start another fund. Thank you.
Selectman Gross, did I hear you say that the process is rather involved? You can give rather details.
Yes.
Yes, you know. That was just a bad time.
I'm Eric Serino again, Goffstown. I would like to say that, in a sense, yes, there are administrative fees on this account, but I believe the town of Goffstown charges the vendor, say, Public Service New Hampshire, you charge the vendor an administrative fee as part of whatever the hourly rate is for the officer. So if the vendor comes to you and says, we need, an officer for 4 hours, not only does the officer get the pay for that detail, you or the town of Goffstown also gets an administrative fee on top of that to, I believe, to pay the person to do this or whatever, or pay for the retirement and insurance and all the other things. So in fact, you are, I believe, getting an administrative fee to run this account. I don't know how, I know expensive, the software is expensive, but I don't know how this would actually, you would need another software for just one single other account. And I understand finance is taxed, and they do a great job, and they're very stressful, and I understand that, and I don't ever want to do their job. But I don't see how hard it could really be. Maybe I'm ignorant to the fact of how really it could be that much harder to just put in some numbers on an Excel spreadsheet and work it out that way. Maybe I'm being ignorant, and I apologize. But I feel like it's easier. And I know that some of the other agencies around here, other towns, actually use this, and they don't have millions of dollars worth of software to run this. They actually do it that way. So that's one of the other comments I'd like to make. And another comment I'd like to make, Selectman Gross pointed out that, in fact, if the chief of police does under budget, which in the last 3 years he has under budgeted his detail rate, and he's overexpended due to either catastrophic emergencies like ice storms or power outages, windstorms, what happens is he has to pay us somehow, pay the officer. So what he does is he has to pull from other lines in his budget. So it could potentially hamper other services to this town, or it could potentially pull from other lines in his budget that maybe he can't really afford to take, i.e. gas for the cruisers or insurance or other things like that. So if he under budgeted, which in the last 3 years it's shown that he has, and in 2010 alone he overexpended 159%. So he was budgeted somewhere around $84,000, and he had to spend $134,000 to pay the officers his detail rate. So therefore, where does he get that other $134,000 other difference? He has to pull from other lines.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 13? Your name, sir?
Robert Morris, Gold Street. It's not clear from the wording, at least not for me, where the money would come from for this fund. It's not going to count anything in taxes. It says the money received from charges for services shall be allowed to accumulate. Presumably, that money needs to be used to pay for the officers and insurance and so forth. So, yeah, where's this money supposed to come from? Where is it?
Perhaps the petitioner could answer the question.
It's a great question. The money is already budgeted for this year's budget. If this passes, the chief of police can allocate a portion or a percentage of his money. Say hypothetically, he can give 70% of what's already been budgeted for the detail rate towards this fund. And then it's up to the Board of Selectmen to choose what they want to do, we'll say another 30%, and where they want to take that money and put it. So basically, to answer your question, he's already budgeted money for the detail rate. Well, it's not approved because we haven't voted on it, but if he gets it, basically he can take that money and he can allocate it towards this fund already.
I think the gist of the question is, does it come from taxes or is it raised elsewhere?
Well, initially, it's going to be from this budget, so it is going to be taxed, but it's already been budgeted, so he's going to put it into that account. After the money is already in the account, it eventually just keeps cycling through, and it's just going to revolve the fund. So the money that comes in from vendors, it goes right back out to the police officers, and it comes just the cycle, revolving the fund.
Selectman Gross.
I just have to clarify this, that these special details are neutral, tax neutral, because money does get appropriated for these special details, but then the revenue comes in from these outside sources to balance it out. So with this revolving fund, you do need some seed money because you have to cover it as it gets started, but then it becomes neutral in the sense that whatever comes into the fund then would get paid out to the officers. It's not unlike what happens right now. We set aside a certain amount of money for special details. Then money comes in from the outside sources and it becomes neutral because whatever we pay out to the officers, we get back from the outside source. So on these special details, it doesn't cost you, the taxpayer, anything.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 13? Seeing none, it will go to the ballot. And we'll go on to Article 14. Article 14 is another petition article. I'll read it and then I'll recognize the petitioner to bring it to the floor. Sir? It's a petition. There's no money involved. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to amend and add to the town's noise ordinance the following paragraph 11L, paragraph L under 3. Specific violations enumerated. L, excessive nuisance noise in a residential area within 500 feet of property line. If a complaint is made to the Goffstown Police Department by a resident to stop nuisance noise and or excessive sound from, but not limited to, the use of any ATV, dirt bike, motorized vehicle, 4x4, off-road vehicle, modified car, truck, or machinery, etc., or any other nuisance noise on any lot or parcel of land in a residential area within 500 feet of complainant's property line, it shall be considered unlawful and a nuisance. At the responding officer's discretion, a verbal warning, written warning, or a violation may be issued. Violations will be treated in accordance with Section 4 penalties. A complainant may request to remain anonymous if the request is for a verbal warning. In addition, the Goffstown Police Department can request, if they deem it necessary, a cease and desist order from the Board of Selectmen in a Board of Selectmen meeting if the nuisance noise and or violation continues. Open paren, the current noise ordinance is available at the town clerk's office or on the town's website, close paren, submitted by petition not recommended by the Board of Selectmen 401. I believe the petitioner was Mr. Peral, Mr. Wayne Peral. Are you moving this to the floor, sir? Wait till you get to the mic, okay.
And Mr. Moderator, I ask to submit a motion to amend.
First, move it to the floor.
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion to move the warrant to the floor.
Article 14 to the floor.
Article 14 to the floor.
Is there a second? The second is by whom? Donna Peral, okay. And you have an amendment, sir?
Yes, I do.
Are you going to read the amendment or will you ask?
Mr. Moderator, may I ask you read the amendment?
Okay, you move the amendment to the floor.
Yes.
Second for the amendment. Second. Donna Peral, seconds. Okay. I gather that the changes here are, there's several changes. Remove the word within 500 feet of property line from the title in paragraph L. Remove the following words: if a complaint is made, those are the words to be removed in the sentence to the Goffstown Police Department by a resident to stop. I'll read the article as it's re-amended. Remove the following words: within 500 feet of a complainant's property line, it shall be considered unlawful and a nuisance. Remove the following words: at the responding officer's discretion, a verbal warning, written warning, or a violation may be issued. Remove the following words: a complainant may request to remain anonymous if the request is for a verbal warning. Add the following word sentence after the words in a residential area in the paragraph. in such a manner as to be plainly audible at a distance of 50 feet or more from the lot line, structure, or vehicle. So the warrant will be amended to read, and I'll read the warrant as it's amended now. Shall the town amend and add to the town's noise ordinance the following as paragraph L, under 3 specific violations enumerated, subsection L, excessive nuisance noise in a residential area. Nuisance noise and or excessive sound from, but not limited to, the use of any ATV, dirt bike, motorized vehicle, 4x4, off-road vehicle, modified car, truck, or machinery, etc., or any other nuisance noise on any lot or parcel of land in a residential area in such a manner as to be plainly audible at a distance of 50 feet or more from the lot line, structure, or vehicle. Violations will be treated in accordance with Section 4 penalties. In addition, the Goffstown Police Department can request, if they deem it necessary, a cease and desist order from the Board of Selectmen in a Board of Selectmen meeting if the nuisance noise and or violation continues. Mr. Peralta, you're going to address the amendment.
I'm asking for your support to approve this amendment. It adds a paragraph to the noise ordinance and it updates the noise ordinance. The added wording and change distance 50 feet is current in the noise ordinance and is fair to all. This paragraph will address a few of the residents, not everybody. There is, like Article 10, there are just a few who do not follow the rules. So, and that's my reason for this.
Okay, and the reason for the amendment as opposed to the original article? The reason for the changes in the amendment as opposed to your original petition?
Yes.
Are what?
The reason is that the original petition may be unconstitutional and unenforceable the way it was written.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion with respect to the amendment? Yes, ma'am.
Pierce, 21 Mill Street. I just have a question. What noise ordinance does Goffstown Festival have? Can you set something? What is that?
Is there any audible response? Question about the noise ordinance?
You have to ask Carrie Stekowicz, our president. We do have a noise ordinance. I do not have a copy of it with me. I will say that the Board of Selectmen, in reviewing this, as the petitioner stated, we had concerns about it being enforceable and whether or not it was constitutional. And that's why we voted to not recommend it. With regard to this amendment, the board can't speak to it because we haven't spoken with our town prosecutor and our council as to whether or not it is constitutional and enforceable. We do understand and we sympathize with residents who have to live on streets or in areas where their neighbors are not being neighborly, and we know that that puts a great deal of stress on those individuals. As like the petitioner said, Article 10 was a means in which to try to address some of those things where we can give folks a ticket for these types of violations and not have to go through a lengthy process of court proceedings. But that is some of the concerns, with regard to the issues with regard to Article 14.
Any further discussion with respect to the amendment? Mr. Heichel? No, not the amendment, okay. Seeing none, I'll call the amendment to a vote. Do I need to read the amendment again? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, Article 14 is now amended. Is there any discussion to the main article as amended? Mr. Heichel?
John Heichel, 483 Mass Road. I'm reading this, and it sounds discretionary. Some of us have properties that our homes are much closer to 50 feet, and when you're talking about machinery, you're talking about snow blowers or lawn mowers or anything that someone may not
The petitioner could respond, or the town enforcement, yes.
This paragraph is for nuisance noise. So, for example, if somebody is using a chainsaw and they need to do something, it's regular work around the house, that would not be considered a nuisance. If they have to use snow blowing, that's covered in the noise ordinance, then that's 72 hours that they can use that type of equipment. Back to the chainsaw, if a person decides he wants to run a cordwood business out of his backyard without getting a permit, then that could be considered a nuisance, and that was my concern.
I'm reminded of the incident with my very good friend and neighbor Russ Day. Came over and complained about the noise my rabbit was making. Any further discussion on Article 14 as amended? Seeing none, it will go on the warrant as amended. Article 15, are there any town offices, auditors, and committee reports to be heard tonight? Seeing none, is there any other business to be legally done before the meeting? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Passes. We're adjourned.